Princeton University Press Audio presents Against Democracy by Jason Brennan, read by Christopher Ragland. This book was originally published in 2016. As a university press intent on preserving the integrity of publications for historical context and academic discourse, we have retained the entirety of the original book. Preface to the 2017 paperback edition. In 2016, democracy had a bad year. By contrast, critics of democracy had a good year. Witness: I wrote about 19 invited op-eds and magazine articles pointing out the flaws in democracy. There wasn't the same kind of interest in 2014 or 2012 when I was writing about this. Similarly, I went on public radio to discuss my thesis that some voters should not vote. Listeners called in to say, "I know, what do we do?" I had done the same program on the same topic a year before. Then, listeners called in to demand, "How dare you?" I had multiple media inquiries per day from October through December. Against Democracy enjoyed widespread media coverage in major outlets in the U.S., Canada, the United Kingdom, Germany, Ireland, France, Sweden, Norway, Switzerland, the Netherlands, and elsewhere. So far, it's being translated into 6 languages. This isn't just a brag sheet. Okay, maybe a little. Rather, it's telling. I've been writing books and articles which challenge our most sacred ideas about political participation since 2009. Yet in 2016, people were unusually inclined to listen. They might not agree, but they are now much more willing to consider it. In the Brexit referendum, Leave won by a slim margin. A month before the Brexit vote, the polling firm Ipsos Mori discovered that the British public was systematically misinformed about the facts relevant to the decision. For instance, Leave voters believed that EU immigrants comprised 20% of the UK's population. Remain voters estimated 10%. They were both wrong, though the Leave voters were more wrong. The truth is closer to 5%. On average, both Leave and Remain voters overestimated by a factor of 40 to 100 how much the United Kingdom pays in child benefits to people in other countries. Both vastly underestimated the amount of foreign investment from the European Union and vastly overestimated the amount from China. This doesn't prove, of course, that Remain was the right decision, but it sure looks fishy that the more a person got the relevant facts wrong, the more likely she was to vote Leave. The United States had its own dance of the dunces. I am skeptical that Donald Trump will turn out to be quite the disaster that my anxiety-ridden colleagues think he'll be. But nevertheless, Trump's initial support in the primaries came from unusually low-information voters. He won the nomination in part because the Republican primaries split the higher information voters. Once he became the presumptive nominee, the party tribalism I describe in chapters 2 and 3 of this book took over. Many of the never-Trump Republicans held their noses and voted Trump. The American left had its own vicious display of misinformed economic populism. Bernie Sanders pushed roughly the same protectionist, anti-immigrant agenda as Trump. Economist Brad DeLong commented, "The political truthiness has been flying thick and fast on this subject for decades now. Politicians are taking claims that have a very tenuous connection to economic reality, claims that feel true, and running with them, sometimes out of ignorance, sometimes because of cynical calculation." Trump and Sanders were apocalyptic in their discussions of trade, and then Clinton abandoned the truth too. As I discuss in Chapter 2, the economic ideas Trump and Sanders pushed do not simply fly against hundreds of years of economic research and mountains of empirical evidence. In addition, those economic ideas that support protectionism and promote antagonism toward immigrants are negatively correlated with political information. On average, high information voters, regardless of their background demographics or their background
Sample complete. Ready to continue?